Welcome back, everyone. And you can tell there's a fourth person here. We have Tyler back with us. He was with us last year. Tidy Dad, that is his handle on Instagram. And we asked him to come back. One, because he resonated with many of you in our last viewing. And two, at the time of you viewing this, we will be in the month of October. And that is the start of all the craziness of the holidays. And because I think, Tyler, when we talked last time, I was going through the process of decluttering, removing, moving into two separate areas. And that's where I am now. I'm in my second location. And today, as hard as all of that decluttering was, being on this other side of it was worth all of that pain. Like, and we'll get into that in a moment. So we've asked Tyler to come on to kind of have a conversation with us about the upcoming holidays, on the thought process around managing expectations. If you remember, he does have 3 daughters. The expectations of gifts, especially with children, decorating. He lives in a very small place, but it doesn't have to be a small place. How can you still enjoy all the holidays and all the pleasures of the holidays without, let's just say it, going broke, crazy, losing sleep, pulling your hair out? And we're all giggling because we've all been there. So welcome, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And wouldn't it be funny if that was the topic of our show? If if it was how to go through the holidays, broke, overwhelmed, frustrated.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That's when it's like, because we're in October, it's like a horror movie. But yeah, I feel like, it's such a good time to come on. I'm so glad that you all had me because it's crazy because I do feel like each year this holiday swing starts earlier. And I don't know, even going back to August 1st, it's like
Yes.
that's when all of the pumpkin spice conversation happens. And I'm just like, when did pumpkin spice become this whole other holiday that starts like August 1st and then September 1st? Like we haven't even started school and everyone's like, it's time for all the leaves to come down. We got to get those pumpkins. And there's this feeling of like,
Yeah.
hold on a little bit. Like the holidays, yes, they are coming, but there's also this idea of like, how can we be present in like where we currently are in the year without feeling like we're in this anticipatory state? And I know for many people watching, it's like once October hits, it's like those heart palpitations can start because you realize we're about to go through that full swing of the holidays. So I do really love this idea of like, how can we make a plan right now to simplify things, to hopefully calm ourselves down so that the holidays feel like the joyous events that we want them to be without all of that like emotional stress and baggage.
I think it's also important, Tyler, that people understand that they need to take this apart and unpackage it one step at a time.
Yeah.
Like you can't go from, I know for myself, we were talking before we started recording this, that I used to be the parent that had made sure every child had the exact same gifts, amounts of gifts, same amount of gifts in the stockings. I had all this stuff out there and it became very overwhelming. So it's not like you go all in or all out. It was like these little things that I started to pull apart that helped me bring the holidays into have more meaning.
Because I feel like the deep thing there is, it's like, where was that deeply held belief that you had for so long that the worth of your children and your love for them or for any family member was somehow tied to the number of gifts and making sure that the number of gifts was fair and equal, even though, as we know, that's not how like love works. Like it isn't a transaction, and love looks different from one person to the next. And so I feel like when we can start to break that with gift giving, it can then be such a powerful sort of like moment that we can then apply to other areas of our life and the relationships that we have with people.
So why don't you talk to us a little bit about how you and your wife, you were talking a little bit beforehand, how you and your wife realized it's October is next week when we're recording this, and how you start your process as we're going into the holiday season.
Yeah. So, I feel like with our girls, because they're 8, they're 6, and 3, and just thinking about sort of the cyclical nature of the calendar year, we have a couple opportunities where, regardless of whether you have kids or not, I feel like there are these sort of natural, sort of like societal points of reflection. One is always the start of the new year. There are always all of the articles of new year, new you, and everyone starting resolutions. Whether you have kids who go to school or not, or whether you're a teacher or not, the back to school time, I feel like, is always this point of reflection too, that there seem to be those two sort of points. It's like end of summer, transitioning into fall. It's this opportunity for us to reflect on, like, what do we really want from this upcoming season? And so I feel like once the dust of back to school time has sort of settled for us as we get into October, that's really where our envisioning sort of starts. And I feel like holidays are at their best when my wife and I are really able to envision, what is it that we want from the holidays? What do we want it to feel like? What do we want it to look like? And I feel like it's important for us as our family unit to sort of brainstorm that, because then we can say it to others. Our girls, they have lots of grandparents that love them. They have aunts and uncles that really love them. We all want to see the important people in our lives during these times. We want to show love and appreciation, and that we're thinking of people as we go throughout the holidays. But also, anything can become too much and overwhelming. And so I feel like when we've started from that, like, what do we actually need in this season right now? That's been a really powerful conversation, because as our girls have gotten older, the holidays have looked different from when they were little babies.
Mhm.
And I feel like for every family, each season does look a little bit different, from year to year. And I remember talking with my therapist years ago, and we talked about this idea of holidays. And I was very big into the, like, but we did this last year, so doesn't that mean that we have to do this again this year? And she was like, well, who told you that? She was like, it actually can feel really good for families to just, like, throw a little wrench in what used to be the plan, or say, why don't we rethink this one thing this year? Or do we really have to do X, Y, or Z? And I remember with little girls, when they were little babies, she was like, why are you putting pressure on yourself to plan this big Thanksgiving meal and cook it all? She was like, your children are toddlers. They don't eat all of those foods. Have you thought about just making the foods that you actually want to? And I was like, oh, you mean we can, like, do that? So I feel like this point in time, you've got to stop and you have to reflect and think about, what do we actually want from this season? What do we actually need? Which in so many ways is similar to when you're, like, decluttering or editing. Like, even if you think about comparing it to your closet, like, you start the decluttering process by actually sort of, like, reflecting of, like, what do I want? What do I need? And then you actually sort of unload everything and then figure out, what do I want to keep and what do I want to get rid of? And the same thing can be applied to the holidays and this, like, season that we're going into.
It's funny that you're comparing it that way, because through my transition, last time we were talking, I was decluttering, starting the process, moving throughout. There are times where it's like, I don't have that anymore. And I'd be like, how am I going to make do? It's not, how am I going to go out and get it? How am I going to make do? And it's like, we'll get through it. Now, so every year, do you and your wife decide on how you want the holidays to look?
Yeah, I mean, there are similar sort of, like, rhythms that have really worked well for us. So, like, one, I know a big logistical hurdle that people try to tackle is travel.
Mhm.
So we live in New York City. Um, our downstairs neighbors who were my brother and sister-in-law, they just moved to Indiana. My in-laws are moving to Indiana to be near them. My parents live in Kentucky. My sisters live in Kentucky. So I feel like travel is always the biggest sort of like logistical thing that we're planning around. And it's like, what do we actually want and need? And we found, years ago when the girls were babies, we did the whole one family at Thanksgiving, one family at Christmas. Let's make sure we rotate the next year. But I'm a teacher, and I found that traveling over Thanksgiving was really stressful. And we also live in New York City, and we have this world famous parade. And I love Whoopi Goldberg. And one year we were in Arkansas with my wife's family, and the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade came on, and Whoopi Goldberg was the grand marshal. And I turned to my wife and I was like, never again are we missing this parade, because I just miss seeing Whoopi Goldberg, and she is one of my national treasures. So from on, like I love going to the parade. So that's one it's sort of been like a non-negotiable, especially because the girls are so little. They're like in prime age right now for that parade. Now, give it 5 or 10 years, will they feel the same? I don't know. Will I still drag them there? Maybe yes. But travel is a big thing. And I feel like because once you sort of tackle travel, there's then the domino effect of what does it look like for gift giving?
You're right.
What do finances look like? Even for my parents, they've said, we'd love to just help you with travel costs, because we know that it's like a big logistical thing for you guys to get here. Would it be helpful if we bought a couple flights as your gifts? And I've said, yeah, that's a really great gift. And they're like, but what if you aren't opening anything? And I'm like, it's okay. We're all adults. At this point, sometimes it feels like with gift giving, everybody's just like shifting around money. And if you just say like, what if we all just make our own wish lists and buy the things that we really want off those wish lists that we haven't, made space for? So I feel like the reflection, you've got to identify what is the big sort of like stressor, or what is the big rock that you're planning around, and then figure out what to do. And for some people, like I have friends who, they live in the same town as their in-laws, but their in-laws may be, like they may be in the middle and their in-laws are like an hour away. And there's the expectation that they like cart the kids back, and it's like the one grandma wants brunch, but the other grandma wants lunch. And then the great aunt always has like a happy hour. And then, the other aunt does a dinner. And you're like, we're literally like ping pong balls back and forth. And you're left with like, where was us? Where was our family unit as part of that? So I do feel like you've got to start early, because what you have to do is you have to communicate then the boundaries and your decisions to other people. And that's what can be really hard, because you don't want to disappoint anyone. But I also feel like when you're honest with people, like that disappointment sort of goes away. And if you just explain where you're coming from, I feel like empathy is the one thing that really could change the world. And if people were more empathetic to the other situations that people are in, they would understand. But like, I've had to have those conversations with my parents of like, this has felt really stressful. This would make the holidays feel really good. Could we tweak things in this way? And generally, we've been able to come up with a compromise, but yet sometimes just you dwell on having the conversation, which feels so much worse than just actually talking about it.
I love that you said that. And I was thinking about that, and how to help people navigate through some of that, because I was one of those people that would have to go one place one time, one place another time. Not all, like I used to do like Thanksgiving with one family and Christmas with another, and we did the rotation, and that became okay. But then it was like the Christmas Eve was like an hour and a half away. And then Christmas morning, we tried to do at our house, but then we had to be at my mom's house for a certain time. And then when I became divorced, I like remember the children, like remember everybody being pulled. And I had said to them, I'm only asking for Christmas Day from 12 to 5. I don't care what you do, the other 300 and something days of the
Yeah.
year and holidays, may I have these 5 hours? And they were like, are you serious? That's all you're asking of us? 5 hours? Okay, yes, Ma, no problem. And that's what we built the holiday around, was those 5 hours. And not that we didn't have anything else within the holidays, but it was like that five, like at noon every day, everyone started walking through the
Yeah.
door like happy, relieved, like there was no pressure, and this and that. And some stayed till 8 at night and some stayed at 5. They're like, we need to get going. I'm like, yep, okay. Because there
Yeah.
was that whole expectation around,
So are
Yeah.
you
And I
doing
think,
that now, Tyler? Like, do you start now? You said you're going into October. Do you start now and you start talking to the in-laws and saying, this is what we're doing for for our Thanksgiving and our Christmas? So come middle of October, you've figured out what it looks
yeah,
like till New Year's?
because the summertime, I feel like, is just so busy with vacations and activities with the girls. And then back to school is always its own beast to tackle. That I always say that everything feels better in October. And we always have a bit more mental space in October because the fog of back to school is gone. But yet October is still early enough for everyone else to coordinate plans. And my parents are divorced. And so we have 3 sets of grandparents that we're navigating going between. And so it always is, I obviously want the girls to see all of their grandparents and and my own grandmas. It's like there are lots of important people to see, but when you start early enough, I feel like there then isn't all of that, like just that pressure, or people haven't already started to make plans. And so
Yeah.
October is like, let's just start to talk about what are the holidays going to look like. But then, Michelle, I think that what you are able to name to your kids is so powerful. That question of what's really important, if you ask or give that question to the people that you love or want to spend the holidays with, that is huge, because it's been the same with like what my mom wants, what my dad wants, what my wife's parents want is so different from one another. And unless you ask what's
Right.
really important and also ask it of yourself, how are you able to then move forward and make plans? And like for us, one year we traveled to my family and we had Christmas morning with grandparents, and it wasn't at our house, and the girls were really little. It was fine. It was fine. But after that holiday, I was like, you know what? There are so few Christmas mornings. And there are so few of those Christmas mornings that have just that like magical
Magic.
little kid energy to it. And I was like, I know that these years are fleeting and I don't want to be at a grandparent's house to do it. I was like, I want it. And so what we've
Yeah.
started to say to our family is, we're taking Christmas Eve, we're taking Christmas Day, and then we will travel to see all of you afterwards. Some years we have flown to Kentucky on Christmas Day. Christmas Day is a great day to travel because nobody
Yes.
wants to travel.
I
And what
have done
you
that,
do
gone
is,
to Florida, yes.
yes, what we always do is we have the girls, whenever we fly and the workers are working on the holidays, we always travel with like individually wrapped like chocolates, and we hand out little chocolates to people that it's just that token of appreciation because they're working on, in service of us on those holidays. And I just feel like it's become less about the day for us and more about just the moments of being together. But also I know that it's like I mentioned, those like early Christmas mornings, it is sort of a fleeting time. And I'm not saying that in a way that when you have adult children, it's not as special, but you know what I mean, that there are there's this evolution to holidays. And so I think being able to name to my parents, like, we really want to have Christmas Day at home, just us. And they were like, okay.
Right. And I want to take a step back for a second when you said about the gift giving to the airline workers. it reminded me of something. Sometimes how we forget things. um, when I was trying to navigate the change of the gift giving, I think around October or Thanksgiving time, I had asked the children, because it's a blended family, how about if we adopt a family? How about if we change the gift giving and we don't exchange gifts? Santa was still coming,
Yeah.
but they would exchange gifts. How about if we don't any longer exchange gifts and we adopt a family? And at first they were like, yeah, okay. But what triggered them is when they got the list of what they needed. And one of them said to me, Mom, they want socks. I'm like, yeah, well, they don't have socks. And he's like, okay, I don't want any gifts. Let's just go buy this person everything they need. So we end up helping them shift their perspective on really what the holidays should be around.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that idea of giving back also, you know, as a kid, I enjoyed my parents. They always gave us $10 each of my sisters and I, and we would get to go and buy like a $10 gift for each other, you know, when we were really little. And there was just something about like that idea of being able to like choose something and give it to someone else. But we've done the same thing with the girls of, you know, there's so many different organizations, but I feel like, I don't know, from the time that kids are very little, we have opportunities just to teach them about gratitude. And there's also an exercise in sort of like managing expectations.
Yes.
We also subtly communicate what it is that we value. And I feel like that comes back to how we spend our time during the holidays, what we spend money on, and even the stress. I mean, I've known so many people that they dread the holidays because of the expectations that their family has put on them to like make the meal. And they like spend all day in the kitchen with this expectation on that the family has placed on them for the way in which, and it's just like, where is this coming from? It again goes back to that idea of like, can you name what is important? And then put the plan into place. But it again goes back to, you know, Tracy, when you were asking of like, do you start in October? The time is now, you know, to start naming it, envisioning it, communicating it to others. Because what happens? I mean, you that period from Halloween to Thanksgiving, then and now by the time Thanksgiving comes, you're supposed to have everything purchased for everyone. You know,
And
then it
wrapped.
and wrap, and it's Black Friday, and you know you're supposed to put the tree up now. You know, people start the trees up November 1st, you know, as soon as Halloween is over. So there's now this whole thing. It's like everything is stretched out. But when you think about it, it's why do, you know, it sort of gets into like business, sort of like economics and philosophy, but it's like, why do we want all of these holidays stretched out? Because it's then more opportunities for people to spend their money. Like so when you sort of break that mentality and you realize that people are just trying to get into your wallets even more, it sort of dilutes the feeling of the holidays that you really want to have.
Well, it takes away also of that you just aren't allowed to enjoy the moment. Why can't I enjoy the moment of Halloween, talk about it for the next week without looking forward, just reminiscing about what fun I had? Oh, looking forward to the next thing as opposed to it being imposed on me. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I feel like when, as a family unit, you start to stop that sort of like hamster wheel, that is what can really be sort of a really powerful moment, because you don't want to feel like you're just being swept through. Because what are the holidays about? It's about spending time with the people that you love, you know, and hopefully doing things that bring you joy.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that, you know, my mom, for example, her love language is gift giving and making these beautiful, intricate homemade gifts. So she is the paint by number queen. She makes these sequin sort of like art things. She all year round, she is working on holiday gifts. and she absolutely loves it. I am just I don't have the same sort of like fabric and makeup. But you know
No.
what? It doesn't mean that my mom expects from me to have a
Mhm.
crafted holiday gift. What she really wants from the holidays is to see us open up the creation that she has made. And then when she comes to visit, sort of like seeing it somewhere displayed. Like that is very meaningful to her. My dad is more the, send us a X amount.
Mhm.
We're sending, or we're spending X amount of dollars on each kid. Do you want to send us some of their wish list items? But even last year, my dad always comes to visit us in October, and he had the girls, like, he was like, do you girls want to choose what you would like? And they had so much fun sitting next to him on the couch and filling up that car. It gave them so much sort of like control and power. And they just had such fun memories of just sitting there and sort of
Right.
like saying, Papa, I'd really like this. And, he's asking them questions about, why do you like this? Do you like completely different philosophies on gift giving? But yet it still comes back to that like personal connection that each grandparent is trying to make with the kids. And it's okay for it to look different from person to person.
I think that's the key. You're allowing it to be different. It doesn't have to be cookie cutter. I know that the way I grew up, it was always this to this to this. Like I can give you our traditions
Yeah.
down to what was at every meal from Easter to Thanksgiving to Christmas and stuff. And as much as those are very fond and loving memories, life back then isn't how life is now.
Yeah.
Tracy E., I think when we talked about the holidays last year, you also made some huge changes. I think you were telling us how you, even your relatives, or how you were seeing people, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
do I
mean,
have the
yeah, no, you're totally right. We stopped that. We used to do that whole, rigmarole of driving all over the place and getting here and getting here and getting here. And I can remember, in the morning we'd wake up, we'd come down, we'd like quickly look at what Santa had given Megs, and like there wasn't any time to like play with anything because we had a 2-hour drive to get to the next house, and you'd get to the next house and then there'd be more presents and people are ripping everything open and nobody knows who's giving anybody what, and you're picking everything up and you're going, oh, I don't even know, like who was it that gave Megs this, who was it that gave Megs that, like we're just like not knowing, and it just, we just said enough, we're not doing that. So we actually adopted, Tyler, what you were saying, and we just said, you know what? Christmas Eve and Christmas Day is our day. If somebody would like to come and see us, you're more than welcome. Like, we open house. If you want to come drive to us, we would love to have you, see you, have you for dinner, whatever you want to do. But otherwise, we will make arrangements to see you between Christmas and New Year's, or even after New Year's. Like, it doesn't have to be like, oh, it's got to be within these 5 days or 6 days before, and because otherwise it doesn't count, right? And it just took the pressure off. It was unbelievable. It was so much more enjoyable. And it actually extended the season because you had Christmas at your place. Then a couple of days later, we went to see Dave's brother-in-law, had, another Christmas kind of experience there, and then went somewhere else. Like, it was really nice and it was so not stressful. But it comes back to, like you said, Tyler, having a plan, talking about that plan and really asking yourself what it is that you want, but also what it is that your other family members need and would like to have, and whether or not you are capable of giving that. Because there could be scenarios where you're not. It's like, that's not within my bandwidth. I can't do it. So how do we compromise? How do I give you the love that I want to give you and show you, and let you know that you are cared for and whatever, but I can't meet that expectation. I just can't do it. And it all comes back to having
conversations. Some of them are going to be really uncomfortable. And some of them are going to be, you're going to think they're going to be really uncomfortable, and they're not. They're going to be a breeze. You're going to be like, that was really easy. Because I remember when we had that conversation, it was like, I was like, oh, people are going to be really upset about this. And they weren't. I think everybody was like, okay, great. We don't have to, it gave everybody else the permission to say, what do I want to do? How do I want to spend the holidays with my kids? Right. And I
But
think that's really important.
yeah, but my goosebump moment just now was that question of like, am I capable of giving the person what they want right now? Like that is like a huge sort of point of reflection, because I feel like each of us at different stages in our life, sometimes we're able to say, yes, I can do that.
Mhm.
And then other times you're like, I cannot. If you've just had a newborn child, it is very difficult to care for anyone. If you have an aging parent, that is very difficult. If you are experiencing like kids leaving the house for the first time and you being an empty nester and feeling like, you know what, this holiday season, I just want everyone home with me. Like I can't spread them out to everyone. Like, I don't know, that question, it's huge. And I feel like it resonates in so many different areas of your life, not just
Mhm.
the holidays. But
Yeah.
that's powerful to think about.
And it also is, it allows you to have the question of, what is my bandwidth? What can I actually give you? And have that conversation in a very loving way. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be like a hard negotiation. It can be done very lovingly to say, listen, I'm not in the same place I was last year. There's a lot that's happened. I just can't do it. Like, what can we do?
Yeah, and
What
it
can we
reminds me
do?
of this philosophy I talk about a lot, which is this concept of living with just enough, that I also feel like can be applied to the holidays too. And it goes back to that reflection question. You can ask, what do we want? What do we need right now? What am I capable of giving? But there's also this question of like, what is just enough in this season right now? That does again relate to time. It also relates to the amount of gifts that you're giving to people. It's the celebratory things that you've decided to do, because there are also always so many fun things to do every holiday. But
Yeah.
even like going up to Halloween, like you can't do every trunk or treat. You can't do every single event that's in your town. So you have to, when it goes back to that conversation of what is just enough for us right now, I feel like, as I always say, it's a powerful way to live, but I also feel like it's a powerful sort of orientation as you're getting into the holiday times.
So how do you
Absolutely.
navigate all the kids coming, all the gifts that the kids get? I mean, you said you've got lots of, aunts and uncles and grandparents, and how do you handle the barrage of presents that are going to come to three girls in a very small space?
So years ago, when we went through our sort of like tidying process, one of the things that we did was we established our toy rotation.
Mhm.
And our toy rotation is a closet in our apartment. And so what I do every time the grandparents come over is I make it a point to show them that toy rotation. And I also repeat, the amount of space that we have for toys is fixed. We're like, we don't have toys in the bedroom. Everything goes in here, and then we rotate into the playroom. And after a while, now I grew up in suburban Kentucky. The concept of a toy rotation, I mean, we had a basement, like the basement was the toy rotation, and the basement was the whole size of the upper floor, so it was different. So them understanding that we have set boundaries around the amount of space that we have in our apartment greatly helped. We also talked to all of our family members about the editing process. So January is not the time to edit toys. And lots of people do that. You go through the holidays, you bring it all home. January 1st hits. It's new year, new you. Hey guys, we're getting rid of half of our toys. Choose what to keep, choose what to get rid of. That is just, it's a recipe for meltdowns. So the time to start editing is right now in
Mm.
October. We have an editing season that's in the fall, and then we do it right around the girls' birthdays because they're all of their birthdays happen within a 6-week window. So our family members, because we have talked to them again and again and again, they have started to understand it. And they also know that, you know, I live in 750 square feet. My sister, God love her, she's in a 5,000 square foot house, and she is in the process of finishing her attic, which is adding on another like 2,000 square feet. My parents know that gift giving and receiving looks very different for 2 of their 3 children that have their own children, and that it does not have to be equal.
No.
And so they are well aware that we have different philosophies, and they've embraced it. We've also, we've asked for memberships to different things. October is a great time to tell grandparents and aunts and uncles all of the favorite places that your kids go. Whenever we talk to them, we're like, we just went to the zoo. We love the zoo. We love going to the zoo year round. And last year, what did my wife's parents get us? They got us a zoo membership. And that's the gift that keeps on giving all year round. It's the same with my mom. We love going to the Hall of Science, and each year she gets us the Hall of Science membership, which is different from my sister, who lives in Kentucky with her kids and almost 7,000 square feet. It's just it's very different, but I feel like you have to name for yourself what the boundaries are. And I also have had to say to them, I need you to understand that anything that comes in this house, that means that something has to go.
Right.
Which is also a natural part of a childhood experience. We've had very little kids for a really long time, and developmentally, a 1-year-old to a 2-year-old, completely different. A 2-year-old to a 4-year-old, what they're playing with is so different. We don't have babies anymore. It's different seasons of life invite different, sort of gift giving philosophies. And so it starts with us explaining that, but also we are the gatekeepers to our homes, and we get to decide what stays and what goes. And so I feel like when you recognize that, and if anyone is trying to put emotional weight on you for keeping something, give it back to them.
Well,
It's like if you care so much,
excellent-
here, put it at your house. But
You bring up an excellent point in giving the memberships. It's also about experiences,
100.
because I think so. When my boys graduated grammar school, before they started high school, my parents, my mom and my stepdad, lived down here in Florida, and they would drive to Connecticut for the graduation. But the big thing, it wasn't the graduation. The boys got to ride in my stepdad's conversion van that had a TV back then in the
Yeah.
back of it, and drive all the way back to Florida and spend a month in Florida with Mama and Pappy.
Yeah.
Now, if I was to ask my boys, what did you get for graduation gifts? They're not going to tell me. But if I ask them, well, what about your trip to Florida? To this day, they can still tell me stories from it. I think people forget experiences build the memories, not always the toy that was given.
Absolutely. And we've really tried to do that with our girls. We always like to tell them around Christmas time, we always like to take a big family trip in February, because it's always been so much cheaper and things are so much nicer to visit generally in February because no one travels. But for the actual gifts, we've also always had this like structure of gift giving, which is something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read, those 4 categories, and giving a gift in each of those 4 categories has always sort of like set the boundary. Santa, he also treats everybody differently, which is really nice of Santa. But Santa always brings our girls like one thing that they tell Santa. And I do have to draw the line that I'm like, okay, we can brainstorm all these things, but I need, when we go visit Santa, that's it. And like, you can't, but you get to tell Santa the one thing you want. But Santa's also really nice because he brings a big box of sugary cereal for each of the girls. And that box of cereal and that one toy, Santa's great because it always brings so much joy, but like they sort of know what to expect. And I've heard them talk to their cousins of like, yeah, Santa brought me, a box of cereal. And their cousins are like, well, Santa brought me an electric car and a trampoline and a Barbie house and a new tire swing. And my girls are like, oh, okay, but we got to eat the, we got to eat the cereal. And that's the other reason why I didn't want to spend Christmas Day with other people, because when Santa visits, it becomes this huge sort of comparison thing.
Right.
Like different families are different. And isn't that great? And it is perfectly okay. But like, there are different traditions that we have with our little family of 5 than what my sister has, than my other sister who, doesn't have kids, and my wife's sister. Like for everybody, it looks a little bit different. But I feel like when you realize that like what I'm really in sort of control of is that little nuclear family that we have, and then it's sort of like spokes on a wheel, but the spokes on the wheel are like, you want to have joyful opportunities, that it's like, that's what the extended family is for, is like the exclamation point on the holiday. It isn't the like, let me just put everyone in this like spiral of anxiety and feeling overwhelmed. Like you want the wheel to keep moving forward and not feel like you've hit a bump along the road. But people aren't perfect. And something doesn't go the way you want it to go, then you correct for next year.
Yeah.
Or, you learn something about each other.
Yes, and I like that. And I do know on your page, you do have an Amazon store that you help guide people, because you do live in a 700 and whatever square foot, and you do a lot of you have a lot of space saver things. And I do know you do have a guide, because I know you have your waterproof sneakers and you have your different types of jackets, because you guys walk to your school and different things like that. So I like it. I love the fact that you still guide people, help people in purchasing things, but you don't sit there and be like, well, you need to buy this and you need to get this and we have this, and my daughter really loves this, and the different things, because I think we can guide people and share experiences on different things, but because you have them up and there doesn't mean you have to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like even for my wife and I, we've stopped buying gifts for one another, but what we do is we replenish. It's like, what are those things that need to just be updated this like year? And sometimes it's like, let's each go get a new pair of shoes. Or I would really like I have a new rain jacket coming that's from today, that's from the same company that makes my waterproof sneakers.
Right.
That's what I'm getting it now in the beginning of October, because I'm going to need it all fall. Why do I need to wait for December? And it's like doing the experiences of like going to see the Nutcracker, going to see the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree, going to Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. And maybe this year Whoopi Goldberg will come back. I don't know. But it's like, it's how can you enjoy those little things? But also what we ask for sometimes from grandparents is like consumable things, like craft kits are wonderful, because also it's then the gift for later, because when the grandparents come through to visit in snowy February or really depressing March, it's like we pull out the craft kit and then they sit and do the craft kit with the grandkid. It just reminds me, Michelle, of what you were saying about like with your sons going down to Florida. Like time is the most precious gift that I feel like time is the most precious resource that we really have, and being able to give the gift of time to one another is always so important. But yeah, I think that those philosophies that we've talked about, they have a lot of, they can be applied in lots of different ways.
One of the questions that came to me is, we brought up about comparison. Do you ever have to navigate a conversation with your children, your daughters, from somebody from school or anything about, gee, so-and-so got this, this, and this, and I only got, or we
Mhm.
just had. Have you ever had to have those types of conversations and navigate them through there?
For sure. I mean, you know, it's interesting in New York City because oftentimes during the holidays, they're not around their friends, or lots of families have similar philosophies to us because it comes down to space. The real comparison always comes when we travel to family and we're outside of New York City and the girls see or they wonder about, why do they have this? Or, you know, and there are bigger questions of like, why do they have a big house? We have a small house. You know, kids pick up things like, we had a discussion last week about this concept of being rich, and the girls were like, you know, Daddy, are we rich? And she was like, are we rich like Aunt Kristen is rich? Because Aunt Kristen has that really big house, but we have the little apartment. So are we rich? And I was like, oh my gosh, it's 7:15 in the morning. And so I responded with, I don't think that rich is about a monetary amount. I think it's being smart with what you have. And the girls were like, okay, Daddy. But it satisfied them. You know, but I feel like, you know, we can be happy for other people when they get things that we don't have. And that's a conversation that we've had, that it's like, yes, your cousin has that really big dollhouse and she got all those new Barbies, but wasn't it really fun that she shared them with you and you got to play with them? You know, it's also reminding them that we have a different life than what their cousins do. And it doesn't make it any better or worse. So often I feel like with the girls, I talk to them about this concept of choice, that I feel like choice is such a gift to, in life, be able to name what you want to do, where you want to live, you know, what you want to purchase. Like, it's beautiful to have the opportunity of choice, but you can't have everything. You can't upsize all aspects of your life. There is always a cost to certain decisions. And so, yeah, my 8 and 6-year-old, you know, they ask lots of questions. And like I said, they're always very early in the morning. But I try to address them because the detrimental thing that I could say is to say something like, oh, don't worry about it.
Right,
Or that doesn't matter.
right.
Because come on, even as grown adults, we can easily get into those cycles of seeing what other people have and thinking, oh, if only I had done X, Y, and Z, I could have had that too. Or looking at someone's brand new car and saying, oh, well, why don't I have that? Like, we can oftentimes trace those back to being a child and saying that that's a very childish feeling of like jealousy or greed. But come on, we all still deal with it. We all have to navigate it. And even now, there are feelings that I have when I see, you know, sometimes the volume of gifts that are given. I do question, should I ask Santa to bring more than just the one gift and a box of cereal? But then we've also had those seasons where we have over purchased for the girls, and we see what that impact is, which is things that may not be played with, them asking for more, because, you know, there's never enough, as we've all experienced.
Yeah.
You get that promotion at work, and there's that twinge of, oh, but shouldn't that salary have been like $5,000 more? Or
Yeah.
what if I get that next thing? What if I, you know, just get that new car, but then 6 months later, the newer car comes off the lot and has all those new features. Like,
Right.
you know, I try to instill in the girls that, and I have it too, you know, we live with this sort of like healthy amount of want. Like want can be very motivational, but you can't have everything. And it's
Yeah.
okay to add things to your wish list. There are things to say, I would really like to have this. But I don't know, you just have to tackle those big
Mm.
questions. Like I said, even if it's very early in the morning.
Yes.
It's like compare and despair, right? The moment we start comparing what it is that we have, we are always going to find somebody who has more, better, prettier, whatever the situation is, right? Like that will always be the case. Even for those people that are over here, they're going to compare to, you know, like, I mean, at some point it stops, I guess, but yeah, it's like you can do that, or and it just crushes you, like,
Yeah.
and you are outside of yourself at that point. You are no longer connected to what your values are, and
And
that's
going
the
back
most
to the
important thing.
holidays, you know, it's like with time, because there can be the feeling in October of let's plan everything to the nth degree and let's do more, 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 and more this holiday season. And what you're left with is feeling completely depleted, which is exactly similar to those feelings of wanting more from X, Y, and Z from life. And so I
Yeah.
do feel like it's what we started talking with. It's like if you can ground yourself in the what do I need? What's important right now? What am I willing to do this holiday season? Um, what are we going to keep from previous holidays? What are we going to get rid of from previous holidays? That then helps to ground you in the present and the now, as opposed to thinking about what else should I be doing in order to keep up with all of these other people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, such a wonderful conversation.
Mhm.
Ladies, any further questions for Tyler?
Yes, I have one. What do you do with all your decorations?
Oh.
Okay, so the core. So this goes back to, I'm not bringing her up again. I mean, I am. Whoopi Goldberg. Okay, I'm going to use her as an example for a second. So Whoopi Goldberg, years ago, she came out with this incredible book, which was about how she decorates for the holidays. And she has helped to sort of guide my philosophy on decorating for the holidays, because what she brings out at the holiday times are all of the really special things, mementos, sentimental items, things that she's collected throughout her life that when she has people come over, they help to sort of like spark conversation. So she has this whole holiday tablescape books. And it's beautiful because she brings out like family photos from people who have passed on. And that's literally her table centerpiece, are all of these family photos of her mother, her brother, things from her childhood. That the idea is that when her family sits down at the table, it is this exercise in like sparking conversation, which I think is just beautiful. Now, the other thing that we've done is we have more like homemade sort of decor that we put up every year. So we have this gratitude chain that we make at Christmas time, which is like those paper chains, you know, that you learned in elementary school that you connect. And we use that as our countdown to Christmas. One souvenir that I've always really loved is collecting ornaments. I think that there's something beautiful about having that as a souvenir. One, because it's really small, but then it's actually purposeful, because that year when you're pulling them out, you're able to look at them and reflect on them. But then when it comes to decor, I like to use things that are sort of like, I mean, there's the one thing of like disposables. So like at Christmas time, you can always get, at least here in New York City, the like scraps of the Christmas trees that people have, you know, cut off that you can like put in a vase or put as garland. But the other sort of decor thing that's a consumable is we have a great holiday cookie cutter collection, because the girls love like homemade Pop-Tarts or cookies. Like there are certain things that just trigger the holidays without all of the stuff, because I don't have any space for it. I'm very proud of my pop-up tree. We have other sort of like holiday decor that's white and it glistens, because you know what? White and glistening things can be up all winter long.
Yeah.
We have artwork from the girls that we switch out, like some of the things that are in our frames, that it's like drawings from school. All of those are things that like evoke the holidays, but it does not mean that I need to go walk through the Target aisle for the latest home decor trend for the holiday. Because even this idea, I mentioned pumpkin spice. I don't, people love pumpkin spice, but people also love metallic pumpkins. And I don't understand because pumpkins are orange. So like this whole idea of like metallic pumpkins, felt pumpkins, sequined pumpkins, like who decided that that's what's needed in order for it to feel like fall? So when you sort of like, again, what do you want decor to do? You want decor to make it feel like it's a special time of year.
Right.
There are those mementos. It doesn't have to be very many that evoke those holiday feelings. Or, as Whoopi Goldberg does, do you want to just surround yourself with people and memories that evoke the feelings of past? It's like we all take those holiday photos, but do we ever display those holiday photos?
Right.
This is the time to sort of pull out those things that just trigger the feelings. And even if it is, you get some bows and you put it on certain things and you put it up in your house and you're like, look at that holiday photo with the bow on it. It can be very festive. The other thing we do, you didn't ask, but wrapping paper. We've stopped buying wrapping paper, holiday themed wrapping paper. We just buy, like we have the rolls of white paper that are good for all seasons and the girls decorate it.
Yeah.
And even if you have adult children, come on, give them a gift, wrap it. You can decorate that wrapping any way that you want to with all of your craft supplies. My mom does the same thing. It always brings such a laugh or even like a smile to our face. But like, you don't have to buy into all the consumerist things that are out there. Simplify things, choose what really matters to you, make it enjoyable, and carve out space for yourself. I feel like that is the real hallmark of just a beautiful holiday season.
Oh, very well
Love it.
said.
Yeah, love it.
You'd be proud of me because that's what I do. Every Santa picture of my girls, that's what comes out in the middle of November and goes at the end of January. And there's, I don't know, there's 20 of them now.
Yeah, that's incredible though. But also like, I don't know. It's just a beautiful feeling. That is better than any Santa throw pillow that you can put on your couch.
I know, it totally
Absolutely.
gets me in the mood, and I look back at the early years all the way up. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
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 I love that. I love that. Anything else, ladies?
No,
I
just can't
like-
wait for our next conversation.
I know.
Totally love these.
I know. We could do one on the post-holiday detox.
Yes,
Oh,
let's do it.
I'll be sending you an email to pick a
Yes,
date.
yes. Because then we
Yes.
really, I mean, I was making light of the new year, new you, but I also think there's something beautiful about you've made it through the holiday season. You've had
Yes.
all of this joyous time, but then
Right.
you're like, okay, now how am I going to shift back to me for a
Yes.
little bit? And how am I going to put small steps in place to like get things together? So yes, we'll
Love
put
it.
We'll definitely do that.
We'll
Look at
title it
Miss-
New Year, New You. Yes.
Our note taker, Miss Tracy over there is writing down notes.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler, thank you so much for
Mhm.
taking your time with us. We will actually make sure you're tagged so you know when this comes out. I'm not quite sure when it will be coming out, but we'll make sure you know of it. And please, viewers, when you hear this, if you have any questions, please put them down in the comments. Reach out to us. We'll make sure that Tyler comes back on to answer those questions, and we will have that detoxing session.
Yeah, if you have any questions about that, let us know.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Don't forget, every Wednesday is a new episode. Hit subscribe, hit our notifications so you know about it. And until next time.
Thanks for watching, and we hope to see you as a regular member of our community.